I'm going to get started just introducing Clarivel a little bit. So my co-host here for today, this is Clarivel. She is the founder and creator of the Dominicans Love Haitians Movement. So I'm super excited to have her here. Me and her have had a conversation, I believe it was last week or the week before. We had a really, really great conversation, and we actually just were talking a little bit before this live. And I'm really excited because we definitely both have a lot to say about this topic. So Clarivel, just introduce yourself a little bit to us and the Dominicans of Haitian Movement, how it is that it started, what it is that you guys do, and what you guys are currently up to.
So thank you, Amelia. Thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you for, Tempo, for having us be here to be speaking about Dominicans Love Haitians Movement. Kind of before we start, I just really want to honor, and for wherever anybody may be located, for you to honor the people of the land. Like here in New York City, the people of the land were the Lenape people, and we just really like to honor the spaces that we occupy and the people who were originally there prior to colonization, and also just really honor as well our ancestors and our elders, whoever your ancestors may be, as you call them forward, to call them, to recognize them. And our elders, the people who are still here with us, right, who can provide us with a lot of wisdom if we listen. Sometimes we may not listen, but if we listen, we can really get a lot of jewels from them. We really want to bring forth Audre Lorde, and one of her insider bringing her forth, quoting one of the things that she has said, that has provided us with a lot of strength. And so we're going directly. Her quote is, "I have come to believe over and over again that what is most important to me must be spoken, made verbal, and shared, even at the risk of having it bruised or misunderstood." And we really, that quote is really powerful for us, especially inside of founding Dominicans Love Haitians Movement and constantly creating what Dominicans Love Haitians Movement is, because there are a lot of people, when we created it, just in the name of itself was like, are you kidding me? What? No, that doesn't exist. What are you talking about? It's a very political statement that many people are against in some respects, that don't believe that it's possible. And we actually created it the first time that we went to the Dominican Republic as an adult in 2009, and really seeing the horrors of, growing up here in the United States as a black person, who grew up culturally Dominican, like there are a lot of opposing forces. Like there are a lot of information that we needed to process, and that's one of the things that I think is important also to recognize is that, that when we're described, and we also, our pronouns are we, us, and you. So when we're talking, we are reflecting about ourselves, and that it is our particular experience of what it looks like to be black, and what it looks like to grow up culturally Dominican here in the United States, here in New York City primarily, and also here in the Bronx. Like our experience as a Bronxanite is growing up in the 80s, like what we say when the Bronx was burning, is a quite different experience than somebody who was in what they would call Brooklyn, back in the 80s. Like, right, our experience is directly connected to also the area that we grew up in, the era. Because we were talking about some of your aunts who are 70s, and it's just like in their 70s, and they're like, yo, that's a different era. Like, but it's like, what's their mind state, right? So all these things kind of you got to wrangle with, like you wrestle with as an adult when you're attempting to understand what it is, what your life purpose is, I think, right? And so for us, we always understood growing up that we wanted to be able to talk about our black experience and to provide other people the means to express their black experience, especially growing up in the United States where blackness was constantly denied. Like our blackness and our particular blackness and how it looks was denied or suppressed. And then the Black, and then the African diaspora in itself as well, right? Like I remember growing up reading some books where they were like, Africa doesn't have a mythology, and it was just like, what is that about? Was it then that, are you negating me then? But Dominicans Love Haitians Movement got created in 2009 when we went to the Dominican Republic for the first time. And so our experience, experiencing Blackness here in the United States, we like to say that we were hoping that Blackness in the Dominican Republic, maybe we were looking for a utopia. We were grasping for something that wasn't our experience here, like in the heaviness and the weight of such despair and such a heavy experience of like anti-Blackness. And maybe we were hoping that in the Dominican Republic it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be that, right? And then we went to the Dominican Republic and we were like, oh, okay, so yeah, it's not the same. It's even worse. Like here you are, and now here we're confronted with like newspaper articles that are, because growing up we would always hear this thing about like Dominicans don't like Haitians, and because of the 22 years. And yep, at the same time as we would hear that, but we would hear also Dominicans don't like Puerto Ricans, Puerto Ricans don't like Cubans, Mexican. And it was just like, well, none of y'all like each other, like nobody likes each other. What is going on? Black people don't like Puerto Rico, like there was always this like division. So even amongst the African diaspora, even amongst indigenous people, and it was just like, what is this? So I think going to DR, we were like hoping for something other than. And then we were like, oh, like I said, we were like, oh, this is I think this might be worse. And, there were newspapers that were blaming Haitians for something. And it was just like, what is this? Or one of our aunts was like, don't go to that corner. And I was like, how can you distinguish you and somebody who's Haitian? Like we look the same. Like how are you even saying that? How could you possibly say that to me? How could you even, how could you say that at all? So it was really, but the moment that really hit, and the moment that really kind of like, we were like, oh, so this is what the mind state of Dominican people are. And it was this moment where so we were with our mother and our father, and we were in la galeria. And my father, he's a 70-plus-year man, and he goes, oh, my great grandmother was Haitian. And I was like, oh, this was the first time that I had ever heard this at all from him. And I was like astonished. And then in that same moment, my mother then goes, and I had just been videotaping her about their marriage and their love, and she was like, he's the greatest, he's my one and only love, my greatest love. And then he said my grandmother was Haitian, and then in that moment she goes, oh, if I would have known that, I never would have married you. And this is a 50-plus-year marriage. And I stopped and I was like, oh, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that his womanizing and his alcoholism wouldn't stop you from loving him? But the moment that he disclosed that his grandmother is Haitian, then that is the reason that you should never have married him in the first place. And I was like, okay, so I was like, this is the illness, this is the sickness that I am seeing the sickness embodied right here in this moment. And in that moment I was like, by the way, there's something you need to do, because this cannot be what we continue to live into. Like, this can't be the world that we want to inhabit, where this level of abuse is acceptable, but somebody's cultural heritage is not. That this conversation about what is Haitian is to be disparaged, and I was like, no, we can't continue to live this way. And it was really a look for us, because we had always questioned, we had always wondered about why that rage takes place inside of us, like that what we have seen exemplified, like what we have seen exhibited from a lot of Dominicans in our own family is this level of rage. And it had us question, like, is this part of it? Like, no entiendo mucho. Oh, libertad, igualdad. Do you speak Spanish? I'm so sorry. We're speaking in English. No entiendo mucho. Que no entiende. I'm so sorry. So it's like it was our way of entering into and being like, what is it that we need to do to heal this kind of hurt that we're carrying from this history that has happened to us. And it was the first time that we realized we were like, we have no understanding of our true history of like what has happened on the island from Dominican and Haitian perspective. We were like, we are very much westernized, and all that we know is this westernized history and this history that constantly negates, blackness. And it was like, and anything else. Like there's nothing else that exists. And so in that moment, it was just like, right, you need to do your diligence, and you need to start knowing your history. You need to start understanding what it is that has happened. And because it is 500 plus years of history to uncover, and that there are many people who have their perspective. You have to kind of find your own. You have to do your own due diligence of understanding what has transpired and coming to particular conclusions. I think like anyone else, like you may find yourself at this point, and then you'll read something else that kind of opens it up, and then you move through understanding what has happened in this 500 plus years. So, when we came back to the States, and in a conversation with one of our good friends, Regine Romain, who's a photographer, educator, and we were like, we need to, and she's also she's Haitian, and she's like one of my good friends. I was like, I need to do something, and as soon as I named it, Dominicans Love Haitians Movement, I was like, that's it. Because we really need to come to, for us, it's like Dominicans coming to as we see it, we are fractured, and that we need to really come and bring this division together, right? This blackness together that has been divided. This Dominican Haitian, we're both black. We're both have been subjugated, right? We have been enslaved, genocide, all these horrific things that have happened to us, and there has to be this understanding, this coming to a place of healing that has to happen, which is why we named the Dominicans Love Haitians Movement. So I see somebody just asked, do you think light-skinned Dominicans can claim being black? So Sunshine, like your mother, can we ask you something? Are you light-skinned? We just want to know a little bit. Are you light-skinned or dark-skinned? This is a very interesting conversation, actually, because it's one of the conversations we were having with Amelia, and we were also having another. We just stopped. We just kind of ended the conversation that we just had. Right. And we were having a conversation about colorism, and we were having a conversation with a group that we are part of. Called ACRE, which is artists co-creating racial equality, and so we have discussions about colorism and about blackness. And so, do you think light-skinned Dominicans can claim being black? I mean, you personally, we cannot. Somebody. So this is one of the things that has happened to us in a previous discussion. Is really understanding like the multiculturalism that we come from. Like, even though we may be I'm black, like politically I'm black, and I understand that I'm black, but I also understand that my grandfather was Spanish. He literally is Spanish from Spain. And because he's Spanish from Spain, a white man, one of my sisters came out really light skinned. Like, she came out very fair skinned. She's she's fair skinner than I'm medium. Like she's lighter than you, right? And yet she's my sister, and both my parents are black. And so one of the things that we were having a discussion with other people was like, well, so am I supposed to throw her away? Like, this is the language. I'm like, am I supposed to throw her away because she came out fair skinned? Is she not black? Because she came out fair skinned, fairer than me because of this genetic, because of a grandfather? Like, is she not black? And it was a difficult conversation, like internally, personally, and to have it outwardly with people, and to be like, one, if I can't deny her blackness because she came out fair skinned. I wouldn't do it. However, there are those in history who have made the choice of leaving their blackness and passing for white, and that is historically has happened. Not here in the United States, and I'm sure everywhere where we have been, where we have had to make a decision for whatever reasons, economical decisions, or or aspiring to be something that you're not, that they have left their blackness behind. So in all honesty, it's like we can't decide somebody else's identity for them. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody self-identifies as being black, whether or not, fair skin or not, then that is who you identify with. And as long as you do your as long as you come to terms with that and who you know yourself as, then that is your right. I mean, I'm not gonna deny somebody's blackness because of their skin tone. There are so many. I mean, because there are a lot of black people who I will cancel their blackness in a hot minute just because it's just like, I don't know if you're not behaving as somebody who we would say is black consciousness. So yeah, so we do, if self-identification is really very important, and that's something that we don't have the right to take that identification from anybody. Yeah, and the census, it is important for paperwork. It is important to circle being black because the census will choose for you. If you don't choose yourself, the census will choose for you, and which is why we like to say that we're culturally Dominican. Like, we understand that we grew up in a cultural, culture. Like, we grew up inside of a Dominican household, but that doesn't ever negate our blackness. That never negates our understanding our African and indigenous history, like, and also coming to terms with our own Eurocentric, background, and which is something that we're not really interested in doing right now. But understanding that we do have a grandfather who is from Spain, and there may be other family members who are European that we have to contend with inside of this history that has happened with colonialism. And but that it's important that individually that we are all doing, and collectively that we're all doing that work, that we're really doing that work, not to recreate the system, not to recreate this white supremacist system, this hierarchy of this person is better than that person. No, like, our purpose is not to create that. It is to actually dismantle the system that has been created, because it doesn't work. It doesn't support each and every one of us who is here on this planet, and it definitely doesn't support this environment. Our plants, and that nourish us, and the other animals that nourish us as well. And so, this system, we have to look at this system, inspect the system, and really ask ourselves, how does this system empower us? And when I say us, I really mean like every energy source that is here, holistically. Like, we really need to take a look and to step outside of this paradigm that's been created.
So something that I just wanted to touch on, because I know it's something that I already have been told a lot. So this is something that I've talked to Clarivel about. I mean, I've always tried to, and especially recently, I've tried to make sure that, social media is such a powerful tool now, but I've tried to make sure that that every social media that I have, it's not that we can't, joke on social media or anything like that, but I've tried to curate my social media to a point where everything on my social media, there is a lot of conscious content. There is a lot of educational content. There is a lot of important discussions that are happening on social media, and I always try to make sure that that I do follow those types of things, those types of creators that that are having really important conversations. So for me, for example, I know that for a lot of people, TikTok is a platform that's kind of seen as, you know, for giggles and things. But I've definitely actually seen I'm actually on a very different side of TikTok. I'm on the side of TikTok where we talk about a lot of racial issues. We talk about a lot of the issues that we're talking about on this platform, which is anti-Blackness and anti-Haitianism. And for any of those who are on here that might follow my TikTok, I have also made a lot of content talking about the Dominican and Haitian relations. And something that I've seen a lot is that a lot of Dominicans will say that talking about anti-Blackness and talking about anti-Haitianism within Dominicans is anti-Dominican. They have this idea that because we like to, and me and Clarivel were actually having this conversation right before this live, that a lot of people think that, and it even happens in this country as well, that if you talk about negative things that are happening in the country, that it's like you're going against the country. You know, it's like if you know, it's kind of like this idea of don't ever speak negatively about a country. Don't ever speak negatively about things that our people do. When on the contrary, I feel like it's quite the opposite. And this is what me and Clarivel were both expressing on our call before, is that if I'm proud of my country, if I love Dominican Republic, if I love America, if I love whatever country, I'm gonna talk about the things that my people are doing that are not okay. Why? Because if I really love my people, I want us to be the best we can be. So if there's racism, if there's anti-Haitianism, then I want to call that out. If there's colorism, I want to call that out. I want that to not be a thing, you know, because that's not something that's showing our people in the best light. You know, and the fact that recently, you know, on social media, I know a lot of people are saying that Dominicans have been trending for all the wrong reasons, you know. You see that Dominicans are trending on Twitter and, you know, all these things are being said about Dominicans on all types of social media platforms. And it's not something positive, you know, it's always something negative. It's always talking about, you know, Dominicans are racist. Dominicans don't want to say they're black. Dominicans hate Haitians, you know, like these are the things that recently our people are being talked about on the internet. These are the things that people are saying about us. And I feel like rather than us lash out and say, no, our people are the best, no, that doesn't exist. I feel like on the contrary, we need to take those things and we need to realize it. We need to, you know, we need to embrace it. We need to, okay, this is what's happening. Now let's fix it. Let's talk about it. Let's bring it out to the forefront rather than trying to bury it. Because I feel like a lot of times that's what we try to do. We try to dig a hole and put it in there and just bury it as if it's not gonna exist. As if doing that is gonna solve a problem. When in reality, all we're doing is burying the problem really for ourselves because everybody else is seeing that it's still there. You know, we're just trying to bury it for ourselves. We're trying to, for ourselves, be like, oh no, this doesn't exist. Let's bury it. It doesn't exist. And everyone else still sees it.
That's too much self-hate. That's basically, yeah, anti-Blackness definitely is too much self-hate. It's basically it's basically unlearning the lies. Absolutely unlearning the lies. And
hey, Mom, come here.
Individual, definitely, it has to take place individually so the collective can actually be supported. Oh, like their mommy. Yeah,
this is mommy. Wait, hold on, let me take her. This is mommy. I told Clarivel that when mommy gets here that I would show her mommy because I've been talking about mommy a lot. That's mommy.
¿Cómo está?
All right.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, so now you guys can all see mommy. So I always say, I was telling Clarivel, mommy is actually the reason why I have all these conversations because I always say, mommy raised me right. She's like, oh. No, yeah, yeah, I miss mommy. So yeah, my mom has definitely, she has never passed anti-Blackness onto me. She's never passed anti-Haitianism onto me, which is why, you know, that's why I have these conversations because of the fact that anytime I've seen anti-Blackness and anti-Haitianism in the Dominican community, it's been from the outside. It's been from people that I know and seeing like the things that their parents would tell them or their families would tell them. And I'd be like, whoa, like what is happening? Because I never actually saw that come from my mother or my mother's family. But I can say that in my Dominican family, I've never seen that type of sentiment, never seen that attitude. Also, my mom she always talks to me about, she grew up with a lot of Haitian friends in DR. And also, you know, my mom has her, as you know, Dominicans would say, like, ella tiene una hermana de crianza who is half Haitian. So basically, my mom, her hermana de crianza, like kind of like it was kind of like her foster sister, her basically a woman who basically became her sister because my grandmother raised her, and she's half Haitian. So I feel like, you know, like people always say that like a lot of that probably has to do with why we feel the way that we feel about it. But I'm really glad that is the case, and because, you know, it means that I wasn't I in a way didn't really get bombarded by all of these lies that a lot of times are so present in our community, you know. Like these things like, oh, you know, I've seen so many things from other people, like other friends of mine who said like, oh, like their mom will say like, no me traigo un negro a la casa, like, oh, don't bring a black man to my house, like, you know, things like that, like things like pelo malo. Pelo malo, definitely things that I've heard other people say, but I've never heard it really in my family. Just these, you know, es un haitiano. That statement has never come from anybody in my family. I've definitely heard other people say it.
You're lucky.
Yeah, no, I've absolutely been blessed, definitely, to grow up in the atmosphere that I did. Because like I said, it's not that I didn't see it. It's just that it wasn't coming from the inside. It was coming from the outside. You know, it was things like my friend, who's 100% Dominican. Her family's super Dominican, and she had a Haitian boyfriend, and her family and his family just completely upset. Just they didn't want to meet her. His family didn't want to meet her. Her family didn't want to meet him. Like, I heard some atrocious things come from her family's mouths, and I was just like, what is happening? Like, I've never seen this before. You're right. Vamos a la raza. Right. Those things, like,
yeah.
Right. Those things that, like I said, these are things that I have seen other people say. You know, like, it wasn't coming from my family, but it was coming from like other people, friends of mine, you know, classmates of mine, seeing that their families had these types of ideas.
But it's also what's in the societal conversation as well, because if even in the educational system, if you're being misinformed because educational books it has a certain rhetoric that it wants to get across, then you're not going to get the whole story as well, right? So there's always, which is why it's really important to kind of do your own searching and understanding for yourself, because there are people who have they are dictating to us what we will know, right? What we will know and what we will not know. And so it's just as important to like dig for the things that are not said as much as what's said, and then be like, wait, what is not being communicated? And you can start seeing that there are certain information that's not being, or what's in between. You want to talk about, you know, like the 22 years that Haiti, people love to say, they use the word invaded. Mm-hmm. So why do you keep using this word invaded? Like, who is creating that narrative, and what is the purpose for that narrative when you use these words? Why would you use these words? So it's really important to kind of like start deciphering and start unpacking what that looks like. Just the same way where, Amelia, you were saying that there are now all these people being like, oh, everybody's hating on Dominicans because, you know, Dominicans don't like their blackness and blah, 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 blah. But it's just like, well, it's evident. People have to discuss these things that are evident and that are happening. And, you know, fortunately that you didn't have that experience. But growing up with our father was very much like, don't bring that black person here. Black people are thieves, they rob, they this, they that. And one time we had a disagreement with him, and we were like, do you not think you're black? You're black. And he was like, no, I'm not black. Yo no soy negro, yo soy indio. And I was like, okay.
Right. And that word makes no sense. I was literally watching a video about that the other day. That word indio makes no sense.
I mean, it makes sense inside of the societal framework that wants to disassociate itself from anything that is black, because right. In essence, blackness and how in the framework that was created, in the caste system that was created, blackness means slave. It means esclavo. And of course, in a society that it reinforces just like it does here in the United States, that wants to reinforce this idea that blackness is about being lazy, being savage, being primitive, being everything and anything that is like associated with the most negative connotations. Of course you're going to say, well, don't call me that, I'm not that. And if you understand it from that point of view, you would understand why somebody would be like,
Right.
no me llame negro, yo no soy negro. Because underneath it, the world of that word, if you decode it inside of the society that wants to reinforce that black people are lack intelligence, are primitive, and all these things, you would say, I'm not that, don't call me that. But if you understand who created that framework, who created that language, then you can be like, hold up a second, I have nothing to, first of all, black people are not that at all. And if you understand to be like, black people weren't savage, we weren't the ones that were going across the world disemboweling people, cutting people off, burning people up while they were alive. We weren't going doing mass genocide to a number of different indigenous people, not only here in what would be then called the New Americas, but everywhere else in the world. You want to call somebody savage? Let's talk about what savage really looks like, right? If we want to talk about that, let's talk about what a primitive society really looks like. We're going to talk about primitive, because people were living their best lives, doing whatever, minding their business, literally, and and then all of a sudden you came wanting to cut up people and enslave people. So if you start to understand, like, you're using these words to create this mental ideology to lower our self-esteem, to have us believe that we cannot be that we are not a determined people, then that is what you will use. You will use this system in order to do that and to reinforce that ideology. And so of course you can understand why somebody would be like, no me llame negro, don't call me that, because the world of it, the connotation is that. But once you know yourself, you know this history, you know what really transpired, then you could be like, I am proud. For me, I'm like, I am the proudest of the proud. There were those in Africa, in different countries who sold us off, right? Who sold their own or other tribe people off, right? But to realize that here we are in the Americas, this new world, and for us to have survived, like, everything that they threw at us, everything that they tried throwing at us, everything, and to know that we are here. I always say I am the most proudest person, because we were never meant to survive any of this, and even today we were not meant to survive, and yet we are here, and we by far are the strongest. We are here. And so for me, it's just like, I'm very proud to be black, because the system was the system, and still the system is still today set to defile us, to demean us, to attempt to kill us at every turn. So yeah, but that's because we've done our due diligence to understand our history and to know who we are, and to understand from the get-up. I guess there are those who from the get-up are like, yo, this doesn't, these things don't align with how I see myself. I'm not going to negate myself. If you say that black people don't have a mythology, and I'm looking at myself, are you negating me? No, I'm not going to be negated. I'm not going to be denied. And it was the same, response to our father, to be like, don't call me black. I'm not black. I'm Indian. And they're like, hold up a second. I have to say that I don't know about you, but here in these United States, they don't care about Indian people either. So I don't know why you want to call yourself Indian, because it's just, for me, it's just like it's the same difference. Settler colonialism is just that. It's just the same horrors that transpire. The desire to erase the indigenous people in order for you to claim the land as yours, in order for you to claim our bodies as yours, in order to say that you have the right to do whatever you want because we're not even human at this point. We're not human, which is so yeah. I claim my blackness and my indigenousness all the time, because I'm like, I'm never going to disavow who it is, what our ancestors fought for, constantly fought for us to be here still being liberated. and also recognizing that liberation, because we are here walking with this internalized anti-blackness, because it's we swim inside of it. We swim inside of anti-blackness rhetoric all the time. We swim inside of white supremacy especially as Black people. Like, we have to deal with that internalized conversation, those biases that we may not even realize that we carry, because we've been immersed inside of it. And so that's our work, individually and collectively. Our work is to unlearn all of that which has been imposed on us. But first you have to come to loving yourself and loving the walk that you have to walk in order to, like, recognize who you are, and recognizing that for us personally, blackness is political. It's not for some people, blackness may be cultural, and yet for us it's political just as much as it is Black as cultural, because we have there is so multicultural, right? Blackness is multicultural. We have an African diaspora for that reason. Our Blackness from Puerto Rico may look a little differently than our Blackness in Colombia, right? Our Blackness in Colombia is going to look a little different from our Blackness in Nigeria. We have to really kind of uphold all of it. That's how I see it. Like, we have to embrace all of it and start to come to terms with that internalized, anti-blackness that we deal with. Because there are too many times that we see, which is why we call out Dominicans, and why a lot of Dominicans don't like it. Like, for instance, we got bombarded by Dominican ultra-nationalists on our page for asking a question of, like, hey, let's put let's put a statue of Mamatingo up. Let's take down the statue of Juan Pablo Duarte and put up a statue of Mamatingo. And people were like, immediately they put my photo up. They were like, you need to know who she is. She's Haitian, or she's pro-Haitian. Code word pro-Haitian. What's Haitian and pro-Haitian? Of course, it's all code word for invader, a foreigner, Black, or all of that, right? And to be like, and you got to look out for her in Washington Heights. So why are you looking for me? Why are you looking for me? Why? If you want to do us harm, So someone can't say to me, why are Dominicans being called out for their Blackness, and why are Dominicans angry? Well, we got hit by that. This ain't asking a question. In asking one question, or having a thought as an artist, we're all the time artists' intention is always to be looking at society and asking society to look at itself in a particular way. And so James Baldwin was very clear that in one of his quotes, and I can't give you the quote verbatim, but his quote was very clear when he was like, because I love my country, I have the right to criticize it. And because I love my Dominicanness, I love my coming to understand what being Haitian is. I love, being here in the United States. I love understanding the multiculturalism of the different nations that in Africa. Like, I love understanding the history. And one of these days I'll come to love my, my Spanish, my Iberia, heritage. But I'll come to peace with it. But I also have to come to peace with what has transpired in Africa as well. Like, there is no one that I feel that hasn't done something inside of this system, this racialized system, that we don't have something to heal from. And so and so I have the right to criticize it. I have the right to question it. I have the right to be like, for you to question you questioning yourself. I have that right to do that. As we all do, so that we can really come to a place of being like, is this what we value? Is this how we want to create society? Is this what our humanity is to look like? There was somebody who called me out about something, but one of the things that they said was, you sound as if you're saying that all lives matter. And one of the things that I was thinking about that phrase, all lives matter, and I was like, when have white when have white people cared about all lives? I was like, white people have never cared about all lives. Never at all. Never cared about whiteness, never cared about all lives. Whiteness only cares about whiteness. And I was like, now black people have always cared about all lives. That's why Martin Luther King was able to go up and be like, I have a dream. I have a dream of seeing us all together. Like, indigenous people have always cared about, like, community. It's always been about community, collective community consciousness. And I was like, you know what? Personally, I was like, I want to take that back. I want to take back what has been taken from us, this whole idea of like all lives matter, because I was like, that's not a white thought. Never been a white thought. Whiteness is not about all lives. They don't care about all lives. I was like, now black consciousness has always been about all lives. And I was like, and there's no reason that in my language, when I am conscious of our consciousness, like all who we are, that somehow that gets transmitted as a negation of what I know as being black consciousness, that in which is all yes, like black consciousness is always thinking about all of our lives, our collective lives, and that and the emphasis has to be now Black Lives Matter, because white people don't give a shit about black people, right? They only care about whiteness. And so I just want, that's the first time I've ever saying that out loud to anybody, because that's something that's like been rolling around in our head, to be like, how dare someone appropriate something that's not even part of their conversation, their consciousness.
Something that I wanted to just like get back to was, I know you mentioned it before, the idea that that you had mentioned about your father, where you said, you're black. And it's like the idea that sometimes the stereotype that a lot of Dominicans will put, that when they'll see someone, that they'll put a stereotype on someone that it's like, oh, like Haitian people are black, but we're not black. This idea of being on the same island and trying to completely separate ourselves, right? And I feel like a lot of it is this, I know we talked about this in our last conversation too, the idea that, like the image that the Dominican Republic has put of itself, the idea that people have stereotyped Haiti as this, poor country with, with all, a poor black country. And then the idea that we see of Dominican Republic, where I know we are talked about, like sometimes like the commercials you'll see of Dominican Republic, how the government looks, that we've tried to put this idea that Dominicans are all these fair-skinned people, and that Dominican Republic is this beautiful, lovely, paradise, and like, and Haiti is not. No, Haiti is, that's a poor country. That's, they're, like these ideas that we want to put these stereotypes, to completely separate Haitian people and Dominican people, and not try to bring them together at all. And anytime you say, oh, we're a lot more similar than you think, people will jump at you and they'll be like, no, we're not the same as them. They have nothing to do with us, even though we are literally on the same island. And there are so many Dominicans that have, as you said, with your dad, seeing that he said, that he had his grandmother who was Haitian, and, just seeing that there's so many Dominicans that actually do have that are of Haitian descent. And a lot of times, want to act like that doesn't exist, because things like, like your mother said, like, oh, if I knew you were Haitian, I wouldn't have married you. Like these ideas that people have, that it's like, oh, we're so different. And that anytime, like, I know, like, there was like these things going around social media saying like, oh, you guys are the same, you just speak different languages. And people were like upset, like I said, like a lot of times I feel like the response from this conversation has just been so much anger and so much like violence and so much, just like blocking it out completely, that it's like, I feel like that's the reason we don't get anywhere. And I feel like a lot of times that's why the second generation, like these like Dominican Americans, Haitian Americans, we're the ones who kind of, do want to have this conversation. Like I feel like, and that was that was something that I wanted us to talk about a little bit. Like, what do you think the difference is when it comes to Dominicans and Haitians, over there on the island, and then when it comes to the diaspora, the people who are here, in the United States, and what tends to be that difference?
So to answer the first question, I mean, again, it's the same idea. It's the same principle. Like, you want to separate yourself from that which is, if you have this hierarchy, this caste system, to say that the best of the best is whiteness, and that at the lowest rung is being black, then of course you want to distance and disassociate yourself from anything that is black. And also it's part of a capitalistic and political purpose as well, right? So you have Haiti. No one conceived that black people would even have the nerve, enslaved people would even be able to liberate themselves. That wasn't in the consciousness. And so if that wasn't in the consciousness, that could never happen, and then it does, what does that do to white people? And what does that do to white people who are consciously attempting to create black people to negate black people's humanity? So and as a political inside of the economic system, if you then have a group of people, a group of nations who don't allow Haiti to have its sovereignty, do not give it, does not say that Haiti is a nation, and then has Haiti have to, give back money, creates an embargo against Haiti, then it makes it that much more difficult. Then of course there's a part of the island that wants to even to continue to want to distance itself even more, to be like, hey, we are not like them. And so to be not like them, that means that you have to then take on being that which you aspire to be, even though you are a group, even though you are a country full of black people, even though you are a country who desired for Haiti to come and to free you as enslaved people, right? But the history there is a manipulation of that history, and so there's a narrative that continues to want to be reinforced, that continues to negate blackness, that continues to negate that they were enslaved people, that continues to negate what actually transpired, that continues to hide and erase the fact that we exist here on this island, which is why you have commercials that look like all white people, which is the same that has happened here in the United States. It's only like 2 years ago that Jada Pinkett and somebody called out, why aren't there black people in the Emmys? Why aren't there enough black people? Why aren't there enough black shows? I mean, this is still going on here in the United States. This is going on like everywhere, that we are literally calling it out and being like, and that we are sitting on our ancestors' shoulders. We have been fed up for quite some time. You need to call out to be like, hey, Dominican people, you're behaving, you have been whitewashed. Your mind is literally framed to believe that whiteness is great, that Europeanness is great, that being Spanish is great. But it's also something, language, that we need to call out here in the United States. Like, I call out everybody who's like, yeah, I'm Spanish. I'm like, really? Were you born in Spain? Because unless you were, I don't see why you're calling yourself Spanish, or because you have this ideology that somehow makes you better, or that you're a black person and because you speak Spanish that somehow you're better than somebody who speaks English, or any of that. Like, that whole idea that whatever it is, you want to use something to manipulate yourself to believe, to again distance yourself from this this representation of what people have made blackness to mean. Marilyn asks, do you believe that DR will ever claim its blackness and African roots? You mean the government? Because there are people who honor their blackness and African roots. There are the individual people who do claim that, and then there are those who don't. But I think that's and then of course you have the government, the media, the educational system that constantly reinforces this ideology of distancing themselves from blackness and distancing themselves from anything that is African, based. What you look to, what they aspire to, is this idea of Spanish or whiteness, and so that's something that needs to be called out. It needs to be spoken of. which is
and I know it's even something like even these like little things are things that it's all connected. And I know like something that I recently saw about was talking about the idea of like hair in Dominican Republic, that Dominicans were very popular for the the blowout, the Dominican blowout, just burning your hair. And the idea that now they're actually starting to make these like natural hair salons in the Dominican Republic. The idea of that, like, these are things that are like it's not like we're running forward, but it's like these are steps. These are things that are happening, that are those things are significant of the whitewashing. The idea of the blowout is like to try to conform to these European beauty standards.
Even with that, that's still problematic. Like even the natural hair movement in itself is problematic, because there are too many people who then what we've seen is that there's still this wanting to separate yourself from your roots, and literally like the idea of your roots, your hair, so that there have been so many products created, or this ideology, like the better kind of hair is curly hair. So what does that say for people who have kinkier hair, or 4A, 4B? What message then is getting reinforced for people who have hair that doesn't twirl, doesn't have a loose curl, or doesn't twirl, in a particular way, that you have to buy $100 products every week, literally like products every week in order to get your hair in a particular shade. That then again is reinforcing that then again is reinforcing that this is better than that. And what is that? That is still, the kinkier hair, the less curly hair. Like I have this sister who came out to me and was like, maybe you want to read this book. And I was like, why are you asking me to read? Because my hair, whatever, in whatever state that it is, it does what it does, right? Depending on, environment, like it does what it does. But first and foremost, it does not have a curl it doesn't have a particular curl pattern that wants to get created, that wants to get reinforced. And so that in itself then becomes problematic, because then it's telling people who don't have that curl pattern that you're not good enough, that you now have to go through extra steps in order to be liked or wanted or deemed worthy, or then that becomes unacceptable as well. Then that becomes part of the problem as well. When you have a natural hair movement that aspires to a particular way, and then negates the other side, and so all those things need to be called out.
A lot of the times, like, it's like our society is so divisive, and it's like there's division even between each other. Like,
I mean, it's an unfortunate thing. Look at what was happening with Kamala Harris here, where people were being like, "Oh, she's not." I mean, I felt that was the weirdest conversation ever, where people were like, "She's Jamaican, she's not black," and I was like, "Who in the hell wrote that she is not?"
I'm like,
I don't even.
I'm like, do y'all know anything about Jamaica, like whatsoever? Like,
right? It's like, what in the fuck is going on? Literally, so. Yeah, if we could, there are people who are out here really, doing their due diligence to divide us, to be divisive, and to continue to erase who we are as a people. If we did our due diligence of understanding our historical, our historical information, like really doing that work for ourselves, then it would be phenomenal. Unfortunately, we would have to deal with our humanity inside of that conversation. Like, there's something inherent to humanness that makes us want to make other people. Like, that other people are dangerous. And that is something, and whatever the other is, like, we other people. And it's something that we have to deal with inside of who we our humanness. So that we stop doing that, so that we stop seeing divisions, and that we stop seeing people as that we're separate from each other. That, yeah, it's like we can honor people's differences, but also come to celebrate our commonality. By far, that much more is stronger if we can do that. then at any point say that you're less than me because of X. It's just like that. That always sounds crazy. That always has us be like, wow, like we have a lot of work to do as Black people, as people from the African diaspora. We have a lot of work to do in unlearning racism, in unlearning colonialism, and in really coming to heal ourselves from this system that is imprisoning us and is a real disease, is a real illness, and we have work to do, even inside of 2020 has opened us up in a particular way.
Yeah, and something else that I feel like that we were talking about before, that definitely I feel like is such an important thing, and that's something that I personally have tried to do, especially like recently, like in the past few years, is that just in a way like decolonizing your mindset, because there are these things that have been fed to you forever. And it's like the idea that you actually, and this is something that we talked about a lot on our phone call before this live, is that you have to question things, You can't just take everything for fact, These things that have been taught to you, you have to sit there and say, okay, like something that I was like telling Clarivel, I like to really like, I've seen a lot of things that I've seen from Dominicans. And then I've seen a lot of things that I've seen from Haitians. And then I've seen a lot of things that I've seen about the situation from people on the outside. And like, it's just the idea of kind of like, just being very well-rounded with things and just kind of like seeing different people's perspectives and then seeing what it is that you think is fact, and not just taking like, this is what I've always known, so this is the truth, and just kind of just questioning things and just, trying to be, just trying to be as conscious as you can by just, kind of taking different perspectives and then seeing what it is that you get from that experience,
Pastor was saying, I was told this as a child because I'm Haitian, I'm not Black. Like that to me is ridiculous. But yeah, like who gives you ownership? Like who can tell you who's going to self-identify you as being this or that? Like, and I agree with you, Amelia. Like the most important thing, one of the in Frantz Fanon's classic seminal work, Black Skin, White Mask. He leaves us when he leaves the passage, the book. One of the things that he says and constantly resonates, we see him as one of our ancestors, is that he goes, "Oh my body, always make me a man who questions." Like always, like that is our work in order to unlearn, is to question, to self-reflect on the things that you've heard, the things that you've been told, to look. The decolonizing is not only culturally, but is also in our language. We have to look at the language, the words that we use to decolonize those frameworks, and to do that work inside of ourselves, so that we can liberate ourselves. Like So yeah, we have to liberate not only our body, we have to liberate all of it. Our minds, our body, and the constraints that this society has been imposing on us, and we have to do that consciously, and we have to call out people who say crazy things like Kamala Harris isn't Black, or like
right.
said, I'm Haitian, I'm not Black. I mean, you have to call these things out, and that is, we walk with that ideology from James Baldwin. We have a right to criticize. You have a right to criticize. You have a right to voice what those thoughts that you've had, your consciousness, and you have to do the due diligence of like studying and not taking one person's word as gospel, but really doing the work of discovering what is the work that it encompasses. I don't necessarily think that I will see it in my lifetime. I may not see it in my lifetime, but hopefully our children's children will experience that. That's the work that we're doing for them, for our children's children. And
I want to thank you so much, Clarivel, for being with us.
Thank you for
having us. It was an amazing conversation.
Wonderful. Yeah. And an hour is never enough, right?
Right. It's literally not. We could literally have, like I said, we had a conversation a few weeks ago. We were literally on a Zoom for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we had a conversation an hour before. We were like, okay,
yeah,
we have to to come here. So.
Yeah. So definitely, this is something that we could talk about for a long time. Like I said, we definitely want to have another conversation about this, a similar subject like this one, and definitely, like I said, in the future, I definitely want to do one of these, kind of talking about anti-Blackness also from the Puerto Ricans' perspective. Just because, so if any of you guys don't know, you just saw my mother. My father's white, so I'm actually biracial. So that was actually one of the first conversations that I had with Clarivel, was my experience, being biracial, and just seeing how that is, especially because the white side of my family is fully white. I don't have any Black Puerto Rican family members. So yeah, for me, that's definitely been a very interesting experience, and definitely we want to do a live to talk more about that as well. Because, the ideas of race with our communities are things that people are still kind of trying to learn, this idea of, of that you, besides the fact that you are of a certain nationality, that you also do have a race and that those things do affect you. But I feel like definitely, especially for people in this country, I feel like we definitely realize that at some point. So definitely, like I said, this definitely, an hour is definitely not enough time to have this conversation. So we're definitely going to be doing another one of these soon. So I will definitely be talking to you later, Clarivel, about when we're going to have another one of these. But thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely, 'cause we have to have that conversation about racial ambiguity. What does that mean?
Yeah, being racially ambiguous, right.
And the conversation about race. Like unpack what race is.
All right. So thank you so much, Clarivel. So we'll see you guys.
Bye.